Throughout history, artworks have reflected the beliefs, struggles, and values of entire civilizations. From ancient cave paintings to modern protest art, they capture moments and shape culture and influence how we remember the past. Studying these artworks helps us understand not just what people saw, but what they felt and experienced during these times. Today, I will be looking at three artworks that, in my opinion, were very influential for their respective times. The first artwork is The School of Athens by Raphael, which was painted during the Renaissance. Gast by John Singer Sargent, which was painted during World War One. And then Rain, Steam, and Speed, The Western Railway by J.M.W. Turner, which was painted during the Western expansion in 1844. First, I'm going to talk about the School of Athens by Raphael. Raphael was an extremely influential artist during the Italian Renaissance. He's considered one of the big three, beside Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. And they're just considered very important because of how they incorporated more like science and like it was a different perspective on how people looked at it before, and they kind of brought back ancient architecture and art that from like Roman civilizations. Um, and the School of Athens uh, basically reflects um, a gathering of many philosophers from ancient Greece. You can see Plato and Aristotle in there, and it essentially celebrates the spirit of knowledge, learning, and intellectual debate, which was very important during the Renaissance. Um, and then also just like technically, it's very detailed, which is impressive for its time. The art or the way that the colors are balanced, um, and it's the way that light it makes it look very 3D. The School of Athens by Raphael, along with many other pieces and buildings made during this time, um, reflect just the change in mindset and how people were going from more of a technical, objective view to focusing more on art and science and anatomy, and kind of going back to older architecture and art, but also kind of this shift um, expanded just not in art but in culture and education and just the way that people thought and the philosophy of it, and that's essentially helped kickstart um, much of the Western art that we see today. Next, I'm going to look at Gast by John Singer Sargent, which was a painting painted during World War One, which stripped away the romanticism that revolved around World War One at the time, as many people celebrated, at least at the beginning of the war, celebrated soldiers going away to war to protect their country. But this artwork, when it was revealed, showed a more um, negative uh, aspect of war, or it presented the reality of war, which is much more negative than people thought. It showed the brutality and the pain and disorientation and vulnerability that these soldiers were going through at the time. John Singer Sargent himself was not a soldier, but he was recruited as a civilian artist, and he was commissioned to document the effects of the war and to create paintings. Um, and unlike many other painters who did the same thing, he didn't glorify war, and he didn't paint it in a way that made it look, or that romanticized it and made it look more glamorous than it was. And he showed the real themes of pain and suffering that these soldiers were going through as at least in this painting, um, are gassed with tear gas. And you can see just the bodies piled up on either side of the line of men as they walk across this small path. Um, and it just shows the brutality of it, uh, which created a big shift in the societal perspective of war, as I said, the contrast from the beginning of the war when people were celebrating these soldiers to the end when they they saw the truth behind it and the atrocities that can be committed in war. And then finally, I'm going to be talking about Rain, Steam, and Speed, the Great Western Railway, which was a famous painting by J.M.W. Turner in 1844. And basically, it captures the power and speed of the Industrial Revolution and just the both excitement and uncertainty and fear that revolved around how quickly these technological and industrial changes were happening. Instead of using detailed realism and tight lines, Turner used loose brushstrokes and dramatic light to show how fast and disorienting the time was, and how fast the train's moving, but also society is reflected in the train. And this overall wasn't very influential, but it gives us a look at how people were feeling and the fear and but also excitement that was reflected during the Industrial Revolution and how fast these technological advancements were happening. Overall, art is very important, and it has been in history in influencing people and also giving us a look into history and the opinions and what was going on during the time.